second, and I will be ready.
When he was saying, back when he was getting in there,
We are
Good?
we are ready.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Borough Council meeting of Peapack and Gladstone. For the record, today is May 23rd, 2023, and it is 7 o'clock p.m. I'd like to welcome everybody. On behalf of the council, it is thrilling to see our room full of people. It's been a long time, especially with COVID and such. And we really all love we love it when we see residents engaged and interested in what's happening in our town. So thank you all very much for coming. Out of respect to these proceedings, if you have not silenced your cell phone, I'd ask you to please do it now. And I'd ask you to bear with me tonight. I'm a bit under the weather with a gastrointestinal something or other. I don't have COVID. I tested for that all day long. But if I go downhill, my colleague, Council President John Sweeney, will take over the meeting. That having been said, Nancy, sunshine notice, please.
Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the 2023 meeting dates was published in the Courier News and Bernardsville News on December 8th, 2022, and posted at the Municipal Complex in the Borough Library. Action may be taken.
Would everybody please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Nancy, a roll call, please.
Councilwoman Dietrich.
Here.
Councilman Lemma.
Here.
Councilwoman Murphy.
Here.
Councilman Cortello.
Here.
Council President Sweeney.
Here.
Councilwoman Weibel.
Here.
Mayor Corleano.
Here. Okay, we're gonna just get one more little housekeeping item out. I'm gonna open the floor up to public comments on non-agenda items. So this is if you're here tonight and you'd like to address the council on a matter not related to anything on our agenda. You're welcome to come up to the microphone and speak. Nancy, do we have anybody online? Do we have people online?
We do. Let me see if there's anybody.
All right, so to the folks that are online, if you wish to address the council on a non-agenda item, please, now is your time.
Nobody is saying they would like to.
Okay, let's move on. So tonight, I'm sure the reason most, if not all of you are here, is we have a presentation from the president of Matheny Hospital and School, okay? Bill Kent, also his the chairman of the board is here tonight, Bill Christ. These are the two gentlemen sitting up front. Let me brief everybody what this is all about. So it has been 5 years as of January 1 since the borough and Matheny settled their differences from prior lawsuits. And those lawsuits resulted in an agreement between the borough and Matheny. And with 5 years coming, there were a couple deadlines in there which Bill will address tonight. But the Borough Council met to discuss the status of the contract, and we asked Mr. Kent if he would come give a presentation to our residents, because as much as we think it's very important what's happening with Matheny and Matheny's future plans, we also know that our residents have a great interest in that as well, and that's why these gentlemen are here tonight. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Kent to speak to you.
Good evening, everybody. Great to be with you, Mayor. Thank you for the invitation. I'm not sure I ever shared this with you, but I've actually known about Peapack Gladstone since the 1980s. When I was in college, my folks moved to Chester, and we attended St. Luke's Episcopal for many, many years. We've had weddings there. We've had a couple of parent funerals there. And, this is a wonderful community. And who would have known that my whole life would kind of circle back to Peapack Gladstone and take me to Matheny. So what I'd like to do tonight is kind of update you a bit more about the settlement agreement and then tell you about the future plans that we have for Matheny. But before I really get into the formal agenda, I just wanted to bring up this slide. These are just some of the faces of Matheny, and I think you know about our community up on the hill and in group homes around the New Jersey areas. But we care for children as young as 3 years old up through adults that are in their 70s. Some of our folks that live with us have been with us for decades, and so it is quite a unique population. These are folks that primarily are in wheelchairs. Many of them are not able to verbally communicate. And the word in the middle of that slide off to the right is joy. And what I think makes Matheny truly a unique and special place is the commitment, the compassion, the care that we provide to this community to create joy for them. But what I will tell you, and I've only been at Matheny a little over 2 years, is that we in return, I think, get even more joy and inspiration and uplift from these people. They are courageous, they're resilient, they are loving, and they are uniquely talented and gifted. And that's what we're all about, is giving them a way to express themselves, even when they can't verbally express themselves or even move. So our agenda tonight, I'm going to start with some opening comments about what we've been through with COVID at Matheny and more broadly, the settlement agreement that the mayor alluded to, traffic, because I know that's a concern and was historically, and I want to bring you up to speed on some recent improvements we've made. Then we're going to shift into what we call our One Matheny strategic plan. As I said, I started just over 2 years ago, and one of the things that we as a leadership team immediately did was involve, hundreds of people of our employees and broader community in developing a strategic roadmap or a strategic plan. And then a specific part of that plan is around a master facility plan. And I'll share a timeline for what we're trying to create for our future facility needs. And I'm going to tell you the punchline early. The punchline is Matheny intends to relocate off the hilltop. We want to build a new facility. We deserve to have a state-of-the-art facility. We believe our future is all about growth for the population we serve. So if there was any worry, because I've heard speculation about where is Matheny going, our plan is to ultimately move, but we won't be able to move overnight. And I'll tell you more about that when we get to the timeline. Let me just spend a little bit of time on the settlement agreement and on COVID. So as the mayor said, 5 years ago, the settlement agreement was finalized. It had 3 key provisions and some other provisions, but 3 keys. The first, we have 101 licensed beds up on the hilltop. These are sort of our long-term care beds for people that are especially medically fragile and can't live in a group home environment. So some of our population are able to, many are not, and those are the people that live up on the hill in those beds. And the first settlement agreement provision was that over that 5-year period, Matheny was to reduce from 101 beds to 71 beds. So there would have been 30 people that we needed to figure out a different solution for them. Another key provision was to help us on the hill by potentially building 2 pediatric group homes. And they would house maybe 8 to 10 people, 4 to 5 in each. We do not manage and run pediatric group homes today. We only do that for adults. Pediatric group homes for this specialized population would be a very unique challenge for us. And then the final key provision was around traffic. So every day we've set up with the township a monitoring system to measure traffic volumes daily, and then there are quarterly thresholds that we are trying to stay under so that we can be good neighbors to our community that lives especially on Highland Avenue. And what we've recently done is in April, we actually moved 30 of our administrative staff, including myself, to new offices in Bedminster. So that takes some traffic off the hill as well. The other thing I would mention is during COVID, we obviously have had a lot of hybrid work. So we have a lot of our functions that continue to operate from home and come in when they need to, but that also has taken some pressure off of traffic on Highland Avenue. Let me tell you about COVID-19. So it's been utter difficult times for everybody across the world. But imagine a population of people that are so medically fragile that COVID could have been devastating to them. This work predated my arrival, but Dr. Barba, our Chief Medical Officer, is here with us tonight. And Dr. Barba and the clinical team worked tirelessly, courageously, compassionately to take good care of our community. When other long-term care settings were having catastrophic loss of life, over the 3 years that COVID has impacted us, we lost 2 patients and 2 employees. It could have been catastrophic, but we were able to avoid that. The other impact of COVID was that we were totally focused on making sure we could save the lives of the people we serve. So while the 5 years of the settlement agreement were moving along, we were less focused on how do we get to 71 beds, what's the future facility needs for Matheny. And my predecessor, Dr. Sprott, the previous CEO, actually did a lot of work right prior to COVID to explore relationships with larger health systems, to look at ways that we could reduce our bed count. And then COVID hit, and all the healthcare organizations had to focus on job one, which was safety and keeping people alive. So that's a little bit of background for you all about COVID, the settlement agreement, some recent traffic enhancements and improvements we've made. Let me now just move on and tell you a little bit. So many of you know our history. We were founded 76 years ago. We had our 75th anniversary last year in 1946 by Walter and Marguerite Matheny. They had a son, Chucky, born with cerebral palsy. Chucky was, I wish I could have met him. I hear he was just a remarkable human being, an inspiration to so many probably in this room. And they wanted to create every opportunity for Chucky to have the fullest life potential that he could achieve. So they started a school back in 1946. In 1954, they were able to acquire some land on the hilltop, and they started building a school up there. And then later in the late 1960s, early 70s, a special hospital was created. So a school and a hospital together. So today, up at the Peapack Gladstone Hilltop campus, we have a 101-bed special hospital. We have our Matheny School that seats about 40 students from pre-K all the way through extended high school. So many of these folks qualify. They can graduate in year 12, but many times they opt for 2 to 3 years more of schooling. We have an outpatient facility that provides some medical specialty care and dental care for our residents. And then we also have a nationally renowned arts program. I don't know if you've ever experienced some of the artwork that we create there, but it's everything from painting to sculpture to ballet, modern dance, poetry, short stories, and playwriting. We perform all over the New Jersey region. Our artwork has been displayed in museums and in New York City, and so it's something we're especially proud of. Let me just take a little bit more time on arts access. So imagine you're in a wheelchair, you have no mobility, you can't speak, but you have creative brilliance in your mind. Our therapists enable someone through a facilitated process to completely express themselves through the arts, whether it's performance or creative arts. And it's a especially unique gem that is a part of what makes Matheny so special. So that's the Peapack campus. We also have off-site locations. As I said, we moved our administrative offices, about 30 of us, off the hill in April. We're just over in Bedminster. It's worked out beautifully, and we're very excited that we were able to make that happen. We operate 7 group homes, 2 of which opened in the last year or so in Far Hills. We have 2 adult day learning centers in Hillsborough, and then a small program to support the residents up on the Peapack campus. And we also train a variety of healthcare professionals, nurses, med students, therapists, educators. So we are a teaching organization as well. So that gives you a little bit of sense of our history and what we are today. So this is a sort of a one-page summary of our strategic plan. And we've used the idea of we're building a house, building a home, as the way to convey our strategic plan, primarily to our employees, but obviously to broader audiences like yourself. And every home starts with a strong and stable foundation. That includes our core values, our mission, and our vision. And then the pillars of the strategic plan fall into 6 categories: financial health and stewardship, colleague well-being, community advocacy and education, person-centered care, which is our clinical enterprise, our hospital, person-centered learning, our school, and community residences, another term, maybe an even better term for group homes. And so those are the pillars, and underneath those pillars are strategic goals and strategies supported by very detailed tactics that we have been implementing over this past year. The door is formed by what we call universal goals. These are goals that touch all aspects of the strategic plan. First, our aspiration to achieve the best possible experience and quality of life for the people we serve. Very importantly is designing our future through a master facility plan, expanding diversity, equity, and inclusion in everything we do, structuring ourselves organizationally for success, and then measuring progress. So that gives you a glimpse of our overarching strategic plan. Now I'd like to move forward and really focus in on our master facility plan. This may be a little bit hard to read, but about a year ago, as I was beginning to understand the constraints of staying up on the hill and the fact that we are in an aging physical plant that has served us well but really is not the future for Matheny, that it was time to think about relocating. So a year ago we hired a commercial real estate firm, JLL. They've been helping us look to find alternative locations. We've zeroed in primarily on vacant office buildings, of which there are plenty of them, as you all know right now, rather than trying to find open land and build anew. You can imagine the expense of finding open land, the timeline for building a brand new facility just weren't practical for Matheny. So instead we're looking at vacated spaces, which we would go in and then renovate. Then last October, to help us plan what we needed to design into a new facility, we hired a design and architectural firm called Canon Design. The reason we chose Canon is that they specialize not only in healthcare design, but they also specialize in hospital and healthcare design and school design. And so they kind of brought both expertises to us. This is a high-level timeline. You can see where we are. We're in Q2 of year 2. What we've been working on is finding a new home, site selection, ultimately leading to either purchasing or perhaps leasing with maybe an option to own. We're working at the same time with Canon on all the design ideas that will ultimately translate into construction documents. Then obviously we will get into the construction management phase of this journey. That'll lead to construction, licensure. We need approvals from the Department of Health as well as the Department of Education. Ultimately, the building will be commissioned and brought online, but it's a ways out still. So this journey probably will take us a little more than 4 years to be able to execute on this plan. And so what the mayor and I and the council we've discussed is that we are looking to stay up on the hilltop for these next several years so that we can safely create a new facility and then safely move our population to this new facility. And I'm going to stop there because I've shared a lot of information with you, but any questions I'd welcome.
Do you have any printouts of this?
I think we can share printouts through you, Mayor.
Nancy, you okay to
Nancy?
post on the website?
I can put it up on the website.
Great,
Okay.
very good.
Before we get into questions, there's gonna probably be a lot of questions tonight. Some may be to Bill, some may be to the council. So I would respectfully ask no more than 3 minutes per person, no arguing between residents, and questions, not comments, please. Go ahead.
Yes.
Please come. I appreciate your presentation on the
do we need
timeline.
to-
Is there an ask for those
hold-
of us that are in the community here?
May I interrupt, because we have to follow certain laws. May,
Wanna make sure he's on
anybody
the
who asks a
microphone.
question, would you mind coming up to the microphone, just stating your name and
Yeah,
address?
you can just come up to
You
the
can come
microphone.
use any of these here. And that's for anybody asking the
Name and
question.
address?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Andy Pirtle, 28 Highland Avenue. My only question is there an ask in all this for the community?
The ask is to enable us not to shrink to 71 beds and to be able to stay until our new facility is ready. And the timeline is important. We're moving and pushing as aggressively as we can, but we do envision it's probably a good 4 to 4.5 years away still. So that's the ask, is not to reduce to 101 to 71 beds from our current 101 beds, and to stay over that time while we work on constructing this new facility.
Are you in negotiations with anybody currently for the property?
We are, you bet. We've looked at a good probably 12 to 15 properties. Actually, JLL has.
No. For
Oh, for-
jettisoning the hilltop property on Highland.
No, we're not. We haven't decided yet what to do with our current property up on the hill. It's likely we may need to consider selling it, but we've not made a decision yet on the timing of when we would need to do that. So we're not negotiating with anybody actively right now.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Bill, if I could just jump in, because
Sure.
that's the question I had when you were before us
Yeah,
last time.
sure.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're not gonna be leveraging the new construction on the property on the hill.
John,
by-
we
by
may
se-
need to, but we're looking at how we're going to pay for a new facility, a project of this magnitude. And if we need to sell the asset, then we'll consider that, but we've not made a decision yet. So we're trying to find the location, determine that we can structurally create what we need, and we're beginning to just have the preliminary discussions of how we would finance such an investment.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Hi,
Hi, good evening.
good evening.
I'm Ruth Williams, 29 Highland Avenue in Peapack.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. Dr. Kent, I have a couple of specific questions for you.
By the way, it's Mr.
Mr. Kent.
Yeah.
I think I just gave you a promotion.
You bet.
I have some specific questions
Sure.
about the settlement. There is a long history that predates
Yeah.
your arrival at Matheny. There have definitely been some trust issues in the past.
Sure.
And I think your coming here and presenting to the community probably goes a long way towards addressing some of those trust issues.
Good.
But having said that, there are a number of requirements in the settlement agreement, and I understand the 71 bed is very important to you. Where are you on the traffic counts? Because there were certain maximum traffic counts
That's right.
quarter over quarter that you were supposed to hit.
So there are quarterly thresholds that are established in the agreement. What I'll share with you, so that, transparency is everything. what I found in the last year is that the system that had been installed was not counting the traffic accurately. My assistant is here, and we've reinstalled it, and now we're getting accurate traffic counts. And we're up right around the thresholds. And so this is part of the reason why we moved our administrative offices out, why we're continuing to allow for heavy use of hybrid work so that people can work from home and not create volume of traffic on Highland. But you're right, traffic is of great concern. I occasionally will get a call from neighbors that maybe a vehicle has gone too fast up, and we will reach out to the folks involved, whether it's a vendor or one of our employees, and we take that very seriously. We want to be great neighbors, and we know traffic is a major concern.
So the settlement agreement required those traffic counters to be working pretty much within 60 days.
Yeah, they
of
did.
the settlement agreement. So you're saying for 5 years there's been
They were
non-compliance?
working, but they were undercounting. Apparently, the way they were
Well, that means
positioned.
they're not working. Just to how
Yep,
much were
that's
they
right. And
undercounting?
the minute we knew that, we addressed them and updated them.
So what do the current daily counts or weekly counts look like?
They look like we're hovering right around the thresholds.
Which is like 57,000
Yeah,
quarter.
that's right.
And
So
you're counting the trips as one trip up the hill and separate
that's
second
exactly
trip
right. So
back down the
there
hill.
are 2 clicks
Okay.
coming up, going out, and that's how the volume is collected.
Okay. Next question is the parking spaces on site. Have you
Yeah.
added any parking spaces?
No, we've not added parking spaces, but I will tell you that before we moved the administrative offices, sometimes we were having a little bit of overflow on certain days. Now we don't have those kinds of pressures since we moved the 30 vehicles off-site.
So how many parking spaces do you have on site now?
I'm gonna look to Jim Campoli. There you are. Do you recall how many we have, Jim? Jim is our Director of Facilities
Hi,
and
Jim.
Construction Management.
We're somewhere in the low 300s. I don't
Okay,
know that exactly.
so the settlement agreement caps you at 300, so you're
Mhm.
over that as well, is what you're saying?
I don't think we're over 300 at the moment with the move of administrative offices off-site, but we can look at that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Then the school, you mentioned 40 students. How many of those are resident students versus
Yeah.
arriving?
2/3 live with us in the hospital. A third, 7, come, 7 currently are day students coming in from other school districts.
Okay. And the group homes, is that something that you were just have no intention to build on the site at this point? You said that it wasn't viable for pediatric group homes, but what about non-pediatric group
Yeah,
homes?
our intention is to move off the hill so that we can create a state-of-the-art facility. What I will tell you, Ruth, is that the Division of Developmental Disabilities, we have a close relationship with them, and they're actually asking us to grow our group home network in other communities.
Okay.
And so we're exploring a growth plan so that what's wonderful is that sometimes someone living in the hospital stabilizes enough so that they can have a more independent lifestyle in a community residence group home setting. And so it's that sort of continuum of care that we're creating for our community.
Ruth, with respect to the 2 group homes, Bill's predecessor had committed to those, and it was determined that they were not feasible to be put up on the hill. So they did not make that commitment to build those group homes, and the borough subsequently renegotiated its affordable housing settlement to put those X number of units elsewhere.
That's not part of our plan anymore.
And then
affordable housing
Medini's not
plan
part of our
So-
affordable housing plan.
Question maybe for the council, maybe for you, but the settlement agreement by its terms requires that any waiver or amendment be in writing signed by all parties. Seems to me what I'm hearing from you is there's a couple things on the table. One is you'd like a waiver to keep the 101 bed count as opposed to the 71 bed count. The second is maybe in exchange for that waiver, the settlement agreement is amended to eliminate the group homes on the hill.
I think that probably we need to consider some updating of the settlement agreement, and it's not something, Mayor, that you and I have gone deep into, but based on these conversations, we knew we would probably have to update it. Yeah.
Okay, and then I think
We
the
did receive a letter from Matheny's past president that they were not able to commit to building those group homes up there, and this is water way long under the bridge. We have moved on and we've sourced other locations for our obligation.
But it's
Okay.
it's relevant
But-
to you because the
but-
group homes aren't going on top of the hill.
Right, and it's just that when there are waivers or amendments by the terms of the settlement agreement, those are supposed to be memorialized in writing and signed, not just, discussed.
Yeah, but I
and-
would say the letter we received saying that they were not able to build those covers that.
No disagreement. I agree. We need to, tie it up with a bow when this is all said and done.
Okay,
Most importantly, the bed count.
okay. And then,
I'm just gonna
Just-
respectfully mention time, because I wanna be
yes, just
respectful of everybody.
one more question.
Sure.
So you mentioned the Department of Health, approvals that you'll need. Are you talking about a certificate of need?
No, it won't be a CON likely, I don't think. For us to move our licensed beds to a new facility, the DOH will license them and certify our abilities to move into a newly constructed. They'll be looking at code requirements, make sure that all the fire safety needs that we have all been implemented. So it's literally hundreds of things that they will be looking at and approving as we get into the construction.
Got
But it's not just DOH, it's Department of Education for approval of a new school as well.
Okay.
So it's those two regulatory bodies.
Okay.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Those are
Good
all
to
my
meet
questions.
you.
Same here.
Thank you, Ruth. Okay, who's next? Anybody? Nobody? Okay, very good. Up, yes. Don't be shy. That's what we're here for.
Hi neighbors. Hi council. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Erica Convery. I'm 17 Highland Ave. I walk our road quite frequently. I have school-aged kids, and I will say that traffic is a concern, especially
Okay.
speeding traffic and littering. So as we think about our partnership for the next 4 years or
Yeah.
4 or more, I would just ask if there's a way to formalize stronger or stricter traffic restrictions.
Absolutely.
And even ask for, police support in monitoring it, because it definitely is a concern.
We will work on that with you, and could I give you my card?
Sure.
I'd like you to feel like you can call me and email me. Many neighbors
asked
do.
for it.
Oh yeah, no, bring it on, okay? Really, because the safety of being good neighbors and the safety of families and kids, we have to balance that carefully. It's the challenge of being on an isolated, more private road that doesn't have the width and whatnot, but no excuses for it. So we will work through it, I assure you. But don't hesitate to reach out to me, okay?
Sure.
Great.
And again, it's traffic and also littering as well.
Yep.
Just so you were, Chief Ferranti's back there, and he's absorbing that, and we'll make sure somebody's out there.
Okay.
Terrific.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, okay?
My name is James Miller, 61 Highland Avenue. I'm probably your largest contiguous neighbor. I don't really have any questions for you per se, other than I did acquire the property right next to Matheny, remediated some troublesome things the previous owner had. I'm quite heavily invested, not only financial resources, but time to build that home. All I would say to the council is, we're watching. Ruth is going to be the workhorse, but we're watching. And, I've had a very good relationship so far, I would say, with Matheny. There are concerns of traffic and garbage and
Sure.
masks with your predecessor.
Would you like a card too?
Stacking in the back.
Right.
My concern isn't to voice issues with today's environment, quite literally not in my backyard. You
Right.
are my backyard, so
Right.
I made the conscious decision to move there with Matheny there. Seeing that it was Matheny, My interest is more forward-looking, what could happen 3-4 years down the road. When I saw the water line go in, I thought that you folks were there for the forever long haul.
Yeah.
I was a little bit conflicted that you didn't bring that to anyone's attention up until the day Harrington showed up to start digging. Thought that was an unfortunate circumstance.
No
10
excuses
feet from
there.
my property line.
We have a new facilities director just in the last month and had been with that one for about 9 months. No excuses, but that break in communication might have been because of that vacancy. I personally apologize for that.
My comments are more forward-looking.
Do you have
That
any questions?
We're going to stuff this room with people that care. I coach 4 teams. I just ran over from a lacrosse game. We're gonna have a lot of people that care about what the future outcome is, what the developmental activity is, and I just would really appreciate your narrow focus on that people are watching.
Thank you.
I can assure you the Borough Council cares very much what ends up happening up on the hill. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? Okay. Nancy, anybody online who wishes to pose a question?
I do not see anybody on there. Nobody is raising their hand or unmuting themselves.
Okay,
so-
very good. In conclusion, everyone, look, I've lived here since 2008, and I live in the Highland Avenue neighborhood. I'm one of you. And I know that there are residents who feel that they have been, that the situation at Matheny was misrepresented to them in the past. Not by Bill, in defense of Bill, but by his predecessor or predecessors. And it is this Borough Council's intention to keep this process transparent, to support Matheny while they transition to a new location, and then to ensure that whatever ends up on that hill, and we don't know what it's gonna be. Another institution can't go up there by the contract, so it's likely gonna be some sort of housing, okay, or something else, but likely housing. And we will, if I'm still in office and my colleagues are still in office, we will have our eye on that very closely, I promise you that. It means a lot to us as much as it does to all of you. Bill, thank you very much. Any closing comments?
No, just again, my thanks to you, Mayor Corigliano, to council members, and really I appreciate the community coming out this evening to learn a little bit more about Matheny. We are really excited about our future. We love these people we serve. We can't wait. It's gonna take a little time, but we can't wait to have a state-of-the-art facility. They deserve it. Our workers deserve it, and I really appreciate you listening, and I appreciate the questions tonight. And those of you that got cards, please don't hesitate to reach out, okay? Thank you.
Okay. So, I welcome everyone here to stay for the remainder of the meeting. We have a fair amount of business, but if you don't, it's a nice night out, and I understand.
We're having a nice buffet after the meeting if you want to stay. Mass is ending, no please,
Julie staying. Yeah, you're right. We'll search it.
I tell you, this is kind of like it's just a little bit of a trip to the Wayback Machine. Some of these faces I haven't seen in quite a few years.
I was happy not to get across the
High school. Talk about lack of trust.
Okay, let's move on.
The traffic jam getting out. It's the bookcase. Bob was there.
Are we set here, everyone?
Yeah, let's talk over.
Okay. Because of my impaired condition and because of the other things we have on the agenda, I'm going to postpone mayor's punch list to the next meeting. So we're gonna skip that item under old business. Let's move on to new business.
We have a punch list item.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about my review. Okay. Elected and governing officials evening. So let me tell you what this is about. Congressman, I almost make that mistake. Congressman Tom Kane's office reached out to me, and they wanted to come in here and do a pop-up on a morning. And I said to myself, doesn't make sense. Who's going to come in the morning to see these people, to ask questions, get help, or whatever? So instead, what I did is I morphed that into an evening of elected and governing officials, which I have set for June 21st in this room. And I have Congressman Kane. He won't be here. At least I don't believe he will. But his office will be here. And then I reached out to my friend at the county, Melanie Morano. Melanie's going to join us, as well as maybe Steve Parker or somebody else from the county. And then we're going to be here. Chief Ferranti is going to be with us. I'll be here. I have our OEM coordinator to be here. And I can have 2 more additional council people, not so there's no quorum, to help out or represent us if you'd like to be here. Nancy will be here.
Well, can't we all be here if we're not discussing business?
You can all be here as a resident, but only 3 of us can work the table, because that's organized.
That how it
So
works?
I am, yeah, I would think so. So I am,
That is correct.
right?
Yeah.
So I am looking, Carrie, Carrie and Steve, would you mind? Would you mind? So this is what I am looking for. I am looking for a volunteer or 2 to be with me that evening, be in with Nancy and I, and the chief that evening, to represent ourselves to our residents, answer questions, explain things.
And what's the
whatever
goal
we
of the
might do.
night? What's the topic of the night?
Meet your elected and governing officials and
So no
representatives.
specific goals, no specific
No,
discussion?
it's to come, ask questions, learn about government, and have a little appetizer or a dessert. And I do need a volunteer to handle the refreshments, so I do need that as well. So would you all think about it and get back to me, please? Okay?
Have other towns and communities done this?
No, not that I know of,
Okay,
but I saw it as an opportunity.
okay. The 21st is what day of the week?
I thought it was, Mark, I thought it was originally June 22nd,
Oh,
It's a Thursday now.
which is a Thursday. I thought
wait,
that's.
I might be giving you the wrong date.
So half of you come on the 21st.
If he really wants you there, he tells you the 22nd. The rest of us, he's telling the 21st.
You are, Nancy, you are correct, it is Thursday, June 22nd,
What time is it, Mayor?
7.
And
I'm
how-
sorry, I'm sorry, 6 o'clock to 8:30.
I'll be there in whatever
And
capacity you want me
I'm
to be there.
titling it Meet Your Governing Officials Evening, but it's gonna be more than governing officials. The chief will be with us, and he's a governing official in a way as well.
Well,
No,
yeah,
he's an
should-
employee.
Well,
You know what, he's a department head, so.
He's a department head.
we could-
Well,
I
are
mean,
we
we
inviting
could-
our other department heads?
We could have Brad here too.
Yeah,
I could have Brad here, I haven't thought about it.
I mean, I see the department heads as representing
The
our
reason I'm
town.
thinking Brad is there might be a lot of Liberty Park questions coming
Yeah,
through.
Growway,
That sort of thing.
Okay.
I mean, no offense to Steve, they might have more questions for him than Steve.
But I didn't want to have an evening or a morning where just the congressman's office was here. I wanted to expand it so people
Even
can
the people working from home.
meet
are gonna try.
everybody all at once.
I don't have the calendar in front of me, but do we have a council meeting that Tuesday, or is it the
No.
week prior?
No, it's the following.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
How will this be promoted,
website,
advertised on the website?
yeah. Next item, police promotional ordinance. Who's taking that? Don?
John
Want me
was
to run it?
doing most of the work.
Okay. Don and I circulated a memo, basically reviewing the promotional ordinances throughout the state. And the genesis of this was when we were working to promote Steve to chief. The ordinance we have for such a small town is cumbersome. It adopts this rubric approach where where there's mandatory scoring points that get awarded. And I think it gives the illusion of being objective. I think it's over. The thrust of my memo is I think it's overkill for our department. And what I found, and I probably went through 60 or 70 ordinances, and I found that they basically fell into one of three categories. One is what I call the rubric approach, which is the big ordinance that we currently have. You will see that ordinance in large towns. You won't see an ordinance like that in a lot of the more rural towns. The other end of that spectrum is there are ordinances that are just really vague. That he says the mayor and council shall make whatever determinations are necessary. And then there's an in-between. And the in-between ordinances where there's a lot where there's a lot of discretion. The discretion is vested in the council, the mayor and council. It sets forth various things that you would look for in that candidate, but we're not arbitrarily assigning points to those various characteristics, because depending on your point in time and depending on what's happening in your town, I mean certain things should be weighted more heavily than others. The ordinance that I saw that I liked best was in Mount Olive, in that they actually bifurcated it into, they had a list of the minimum requirements to promote to chief, and they had preferred requirements to promote to chief. So it set forth the standard of what we absolutely have to have, and then the things that we might have in the ideal candidate. So with that being said, my position would be that we take a look at our ordinance and seek to revise it to be more consistent with what we're seeing in the Mount Olive ordinance.
And this is for eventually all positions, not just.
It would be for all positions, because we did amend the ordinance because the corporal is now a pensionable salaried position. So now that's part, like the sergeant, and I'm not opposed to having an exam for the chief or for the sergeant, but one of the things that has come across to me is we're different than a lot of towns, and Mayor Skinner and I at the time tried very hard to get a test that was more indicative of policing in Peapack Gladstone as opposed to policing in a more urban area, and you're really not. That's a big risk. So I open the floor to comments from the council. Steve, I know you're here, and I know you're going to want to weigh in.
I do have a question. So the minimum and the preferred, are those both published in terms of the job?
Yeah, if you look at it's laid out exactly that way in the Mount Olive ordinance. One of the first things I learned working for a law firm is there's no pride in authorship. Somebody else has a good idea and it's in an ordinance, you take it. Yeah, we don't have to reinvent the wheel completely on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
John, do you see us, when we hone in on something, bringing the PBA into the discussions to get their input as well, having a seat at the table? Not a deciding seat, but I think they should be a voice in the chorus.
I don't have an objection to it.
Do you think that makes sense?
I think that's acceptable, yes, for sure. My main thing was with this is having gone through the process 3 times in 24 years. I know the last time the attempt was made to kind of narrow it down to more what we did here, what we do here, and I think what we found was not in the council's attempt or borough's attempt to do it, but in the testing agency's attempt, they picked out things that were so minuscule that we don't deal with on a routine basis that some of us never even saw some of the wording on that test. Absolute great idea to narrow it more toward what we do here. My suggestion is, and my input on this is that I can't test anymore. I'm done. I've hit that. There's no more for me.
One of the questions I would have for you with the new licensing requirements that are being promulgated. I mean, I'm assuming that that there's going to be some meat on those bones, and that the licensing requirements is going to be assuring not just us but all towns throughout New Jersey that the police are up to snuff in terms of what they need to know?
Yeah, a lot of it's going to be there's going to be a lot of training involved, obviously, with the licensing. So, other factors as well, but the main thing, offensive tactics. So that's hand-to-hand rolling around on mats, 40 hours per officer. So just more training that goes into what we have to do now. I think years ago when we attempted to hire, back in like 2012, 13, we came up with about 60 to 70 hours of mandatory training. We're probably at least double that, if not more now. And every year they had more training and more training and more training. So that plays into the licensing. Everybody's got to check certain boxes. A couple of us that were in a position where we may not have to go through all that multiple times, but there are some guys here that will. So again, I think the process should also, there should be input from somebody such as myself, Tom Scanlon, who's a sergeant, we've tested 3 times here. We've been through all this testing. We took the classes, we bought the books and we studied, we did all this stuff. So knowing what's on those tests in the past, and knowing the process we've been through, again, it absolutely needs to be changed up here. We have to make some sort of change in it. It's just a cumbersome process. It's expensive, and even towns around us, even with a few more guys, 15 guys, their processes are much more streamlined, very simple. For the corporal's positions here, in the past we sat up in a room and we interviewed with, at times we would bring in chiefs from other departments. Most of the time it was just a chief and whoever the supervisors were at that time, and everybody gave their opinions, and then we picked the guy from there. But I understand there needs to be certain boxes checked for certain positions. Absolutely. I think for the chiefs, you do need some sort of testing process. Maybe not the full process which we go through now, but something along those lines. As far as the points and the percentages given for these things, I think that needs to be completely revamped as well, and I'm sure will be looked into. So.
Chief, is there another source for a test for chief other than the New Jersey Chiefs Association, which is expensive and, to your point, not?
I'd have to look into it, sir. I can. I know a lot of them use the New Jersey Chiefs to do the testing. It's depending upon which even if you take a study course, there's it's the old, basically they give you the answers and you study and you go forward and you learn what the answer. A lot of that, and I'll tell you honestly, some of the best things we do is when again after the 3rd time I've taken it, it really helps you because you have to go back into all these things that maybe 5 years ago you looked at last. Whereas now you're diving back into it, you're getting back into it. So I do think for some of these positions there should be some sort of testing, even if it's an oral exam or a written exam, not both together, because it's a cumbersome process for everybody involved, and expense is going through the roof. So definitely agree with streamlining.
And we don't want to test to see how good people take tests, right?
Exactly, and I always looked at this, especially at our frontline supervision, which our 2 corporals are right now. If I can't tell you who should be supervising our officers, I'm not doing my job, which I can tell you right now off the top of my head, we have guys that are supervising right now that can do the job. And who coming forward, who we need to bring along, and who we need to start to cultivate to supervise people, because some of us won't be around for much longer. So, yeah, I definitely,
And just to that point, when we look at the wording in the ordinance, I would think, for all 3 positions, assuming you're around at that time, the chief is going to have some role in all three promotions in terms of weighing in, because when you're retiring, your replacement, I'm sure you're going to have an opinion as well.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, how do we want to proceed, John?
Well, my goal would be to move forward on what I would call the Mount Olive ordinance basis, and we basically move. We get a draft together, and we sit down with the PBA, and we sit down with Steve.
Do you propose using the same something?
I would use it. I would use it as a
template.
template.
Yeah. Okay.
It's got to be tweaked to fit into our structure as it is.
When I just reviewed the Mount Olive, and there's a lot of good, especially the requirements and so forth and so on. But what was sent to us does not specifically say how it happens. Like, for example, the chief suggests there should be some sort of test, but it doesn't state that in here.
It sets forth
qualifications.
It sets forth qualifications. And
it
if you go
doesn't-
further,
it doesn't
go down
give
to
it-
C, it says successful completion of such interviews, examinations, or tests as the appropriate authority deems necessary. it gives us the flexibility. We may have.
But this, like, for example, this doesn't even mention anything about council making the appointment.
It's probably prior to, that I didn't
Yeah, it
rephrase
might
the
be
entire
before,
thing.
okay. All right, why don't we circulate that, and then circulate that to everybody, the full one, and let's all provide our comments back to you,
Okay.
whether it works or, wait, actually, that's a little preliminary of me. Does anybody not see a reason to go down the Mount Olive Road?
Well, so reading through this, John, I like the Mount Olive kind of minimum and preferred approach for sure. I'm not seeing, to the mayor's point, the process part. I think Downbrook is showing a little bit more around that with like a committee of, that
Okay, yeah.
represents kind of, not just oversight, but involvement in the interviewing and, it seems like it's a pretty diverse set of individuals who would be part of a committee like that, so maybe look at the Boundbrook part for the process.
You know what, I don't, it's been a little while since I looked at, but I did like the Boundbrook ordinance. I'm assuming John Bruder didn't have anything to do with it.
I prosecute, I don't, draft
So
ordinances
he might
there.
get paid twice.
Although I have been asked to draft a couple now.
If you'd like, I can reach out to the chief there and find out what their process is, as far as testing and so forth.
Oh, no, it's in here.
It's in there.
I mean, it says the chief of police shall be appointed in accordance, upon nomination by the mayor and with advice and consent of the council and so forth. So
Yeah.
anyway, it has more of that language that I think could be pulled into this.
I have to tell you, I kind of like the I haven't read the whole Mount Olive one,
Yeah.
but I kind of like the Boundbrook one as well, for the reasons Amy cited.
Let them both sit with you for a little.
All right.
A little. It may just be the Mount Olive approach of having preferred
I
and
like that for sure.
and minimum requirements is what we'll pull from it, and we can merge it with the Boundbrook.
All right.
Okay, we don't need to get into the weeds of it. It just basically consensus that we take a stab at restructuring our promotional ordinance to make
No, we wanna do it.
Simplify it.
to make it easier to work with.
All right, so may I ask you just to send out a full copy of both? Everybody has the Boundbrook one already, but send a full copy of the Mount Olive one, and let's all look at it and be prepared to discuss it at the next or the meeting thereafter. Sure. Is that okay? Okay. Chief, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Steve.
No problem, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Appreciate it.
Okay, let's move on. Good job, John.
I appreciate that. Thank
And oh, by the way, your matrix of requirements was well done.
you. My boxes to check?
Your spreadsheet. Okay, moving on to Highlands Planning Area Assessment. So as you all know, we had a presentation from Highlands. Highlands went and spoke to the Land Use Board. I understand I was not there that night, I was away. I understand it was received favorably by the Land Use Board. I suppose the next
Land Use Board, the number one concern was the overall,
opting out.
the ability to be able to opt out,
Yeah.
and that we're coming into compliance with it as opposed to joining the preservation area, which most of the people up there who were, when the Highlands came about, were aware of all those factors, and they had that answered satisfactorily.
Okay. So the next step with council consent would be to go ahead and engage Highlands to provide a grant to do a study to see the feasibility of us joining Highlands and have
Coming
that
into
paid for.
compliance.
You're coming into compliance. How does the council feel about proceeding on that?
I'm in favor.
I am too.
Favor?
We
Yeah,
have no.
Jill?
I'm in favor.
I think we all are, I
Yeah,
am.
We don't know what's in the box until we open it.
All right,
See it, yeah.
Nancy, I
It's on
know.
their dime, right? So why not explore
They
it?
made it
Yeah.
clear.
Now, they sent us a couple applications, they're very simple. Nancy, I know you're currently weeded with the healthcare situation. Would you like one of us or me to handle the application process?
I can speak with Ben and see what, he suggests. It doesn't make a difference. It's,
I would,
I can send an email out to him.
yeah, but it's, no, what's he gonna tell us? Fill out the applications, we know that already, right?
Right, but I'm just saying, let me look at the application and then
Okay.
I'll go from,
All right, If
From
you,
there, I
if
didn't
you,
really-
if you, I know you're jammed at the moment, if you can't, do the applications, I will do them.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Mayor,
Alright,
I'm
so-
happy to help with that process if need be.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Alright, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the applications, and then at our next meeting, Nancy, we're gonna need a resolution
Yes.
for that. Okay, moving on. A reading and approval of minutes, regular meeting minutes from May 9th, 2023. A motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemon?
Yes.
Councilwoman Murphy?
Yes.
Councilman Cortello?
Aye.
Council President Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilwoman Weibel?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Well, council members, would you please look at resolutions 112 through 115, and then 117 through 118, and we can do a consent agenda for all of those, unless you'd like to pull them.
I would suggest pulling 113. I have to make a minor mark.
Okay, very good.
I always like to have
Yeah.
a big purchase contract like that, have a
Separate.
separate roll call for that.
That makes sense.
I also need to abstain from that one, so I
Okay.
wouldn't be able to include that.
All right, is everyone okay with a consent agenda for the others?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All right, so consent agenda for 112, 114, 115, 117, and 118.
So-
Motion and second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Nancy, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemon?
Yes.
Councilwoman Murphy?
Yes.
Councilman Cortello?
Aye.
Council President Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilwoman Weibel?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to 113-23, a resolution authorizing the borough to enter into an agreement with seller John Smith for the purchase of a farmland preservation agreement.
Before the motion and second, allow me to just suggest a modification and then motion and second. We learned in speaking with the seller's attorney that on the deed, it appears that John's daughter Sarah, with an H, is also one of the title owners. So the resolution reads that we're purchasing it from John Smith. The most important part is that we're purchasing the correct lot and block, which is set forth. But if we can amend it to include from John Smith as well as Sarah Smith.
Okay, motion and second for a revised.
And the contract itself already reflects Sarah being a,
Contract we've now modified.
yes.
Okay. Motion and second for a revised resolution, please.
So moved. Second.
Okay. When you're ready, Nancy.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Abstain.
Councilman Lemon?
Yes.
Councilwoman Murphy?
Yes.
Councilman Cortello?
Aye.
Council President Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilwoman Weibel?
Aye.
Very good. Moving on to bills list, 116-23. If you would read the amount, please, Nancy.
$877,515.65.
Does any council member have any item that they wish to pull for discussion? Okay, a motion and a second to pay the payment of bills.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call when you're ready, Nancy.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilwoman Murphy?
Yes.
Councilman Cortello?
Aye.
Council President Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilwoman Weibel?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Let's move on to council reports. Let's start with finance. Eric, do you have anything?
Nothing right now.
And
Mayor.
neither do I right now, so that's finance. Jill, sanitation sewer.
Nothing to report right now.
Okay, Jamie, borough property.
So a few things to report. First of all, I want to give a shout out to the Department of Public Works, DPW. They did a great job creating that trail over on that 12.66 acres that we purchased using Green Acres and County Open Space Fund last year. So that's pretty exciting. It's well marked. I walked it. It's about maybe a half mile. We're going to get some additional signage. Also, I think Matthew's going to post it tomorrow. We're going to do a survey. We're going to post it on PG Notify and Nextdoor. We're going to do a survey to name the park, and I sent out the optional names. It was Conover Crossing, Schoolhouse Trail, Vernon Manor Reserve, and PG Municipal Park. I was gonna say Murphy Meadows, but
Jamie Murphy Trail.
Say my name, perfect. Just kidding. Anyhow, so that's gonna go out, and so people can vote on it. So we'll leave it open for 2 weeks or something, and see what kind of response we get. So we'll get some naming, we'll get some trail markers, and hopefully the residents and their leashed pets will enjoy it. And then also for property, Nancy, Brad, Fagan, myself, and Lucinda from Carter Van Dyke met last week. For several hours, we walked through Liberty Park. As a reminder, V&K's obligation to kind of maintain the park's plantings, the grass is an aside, that they have until October to make sure that lives and to care for it. But everything else ends the beginning of June. So we wanted to do a full walkthrough to kind of assess where we are at the point where they basically hand it over to us. And not surprising, there's a lot of issues. We are concerned that there's going to be pushback from V&K. We sent a fairly detailed summary of our discussion and our walkthrough to V&K. In kind of quick summary for you all, we think all the beds should be re-edged, remulched, and weeded before passing on. I just try to think of it as if I had the same the same project on my property and someone handed it over to me looking the way it does, I would not be happy. So we asked them to do all of that. We counted and identified multiple shrubs and trees that were either dead or dying, and we requested that they replace those, or feasibly an alternate plant, because there were some areas where it seemed like maybe they weren't the best plant for that area. And then around the pond, if you look on the west side, the far side on the train side of the pond, it looks pretty good. Those grasses did really well. Those grasses are in the shade. They dried up, less quickly. And so we all kind of strongly believe that it's not because we took the fence down early, right?
It wasn't watered.
It wasn't watered, so the plants on the south, the east, and on the north side are dead and dying because nothing was watered. I mean, nothing. It was so dry and cracked walking around. It was really heartbreaking how many plants died. So we did request that they replace all those things too. That I know we're gonna have a fight because of course we removed that goose fencing, and I would imagine that V&K response to that would be like, you remove the protective fencing, that's your issue. But it's heavily has tons of weeds, so if nothing else, we can get those weeds removed and we can replace some of those plantings. It wouldn't be cost prohibitive to the town. So we sent that email to V&K and have yet to have a response. Nancy sent a follow-up email requesting acknowledgement of receipt of this email, and we have received nothing.
Welcome to the hell that was
Right.
I am going to make a phone call, which I know he will probably not answer my phone call tomorrow, and leave a voice message with him that I just need to know that he received the email.
Yeah.
And I will follow up again with the email. If I send it every day, I will.
Right, and it may be a situation, I'm sorry, real quickly, that we should send that email in like a certified letter format.
Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna suggest.
Yeah,
If you're gonna elevate it, I would elevate
Yeah,
it right
have
to the
John.
village.
I know,
Yeah.
Have
I know
John send it.
usually step 4 with V&K.
right, just so that we have it, because it will likely come down to a financial fight.
I will forward you the email so that you can see what we
Right.
put in the email, and then you can
Right.
do that
It's
letter.
really, it's not
June.
lengthy, it's bullet
It's
points.
not our first rodeo.
We try to keep it simple for him.
And Jimmy, we have both the bond and we're withholding money, so
Right.
we're covered in two
Right,
ways.
so we have, some money, it just, of course, it's a challenge, it'll be a fight, and, so we're hoping he responds, but aren't necessarily helpful.
Is he watering the grass? I did see
He, honestly, the day that we were meeting, he came out, just him, and he was spreading seed and
What, the
spreading.
V&K guy?
Yeah, like,
I
like
saw
little
him
guy.
there. I drove
Yeah,
by and I
just
saw
him.
you guys meeting, and I was like,
Yeah,
what's he
and I
doing?
feel like he just hung around because we were there.
I'm also surprised the grass, which was done professionally
Mhm.
by Jeremy, right,
Mhm.
didn't root better.
Because it wasn't watered. I mean, that's just the reality. If you do not water it, it's such a shame because they they seeded it, you know, they overseeded it. I mean, they did all the right things, but if you don't water, things aren't gonna grow. And that's
Alright.
just, it's the earth is cracked and dry.
I see. Okay.
Who is responsible for watering?
V&K. Yeah.
So they just didn't water it.
They didn't water it, and hence all these plants died and everything's going. So they are absolutely responsible for the things I just mentioned. And so if he doesn't come through and kind of respect the things that we requested in this email, it'll just be a financial battle for us, which if that's what it is. But and just an aside, Lucinda did not charge us for this visit. This was a helpful
Did
thing
she
for
have any comments on the condition of the park? Was she disappointed with the way the foliage looked?
She was disappointed. I mean, she was disappointed mostly in the watering. I think she did admit that maybe some of the plant choices. I think it's hard to predict necessarily how plants are going to do in every location. So I think that it was her suggestion. You know, when we were talking about replacing certain shrubs and grasses, well, maybe try something different there because they just don't seem to be thriving.
That's the right answer.
But I mean, she was disappointed because all it took was water, and I'm sure V&K regrets it. If they would have just put the effort in, they would not be in this point. And I think that's it. Any questions about that?
I have a question
Yes.
for you. The geese.
Yeah.
Okay.
So initially, I was feeling so good.
So
they
was
were
I
gone for
until
a couple
today.
of days, and then they're back with babies.
I was
Yes.
there over the weekend,
How
and
did the
it
babies
was.
get there?
I know we addled eggs,
We
but
had
they had
babies in my yard.
they
and
had
left.
I think they had some nests in the river.
It's your fault?
My face.
Let me ask you,
Mhm.
and as I know this is your area of expertise, is some, I'll call it process to get rid of them, something that we should be exploring? And if you get rid of them, do they come to another gaggle come in?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, relocating them is really not an option,
That's
right?
not an option. You can't
Well, because
capture
they
them, take them to
they just come back. They
They can
just come
fly
back.
No, but let's say you drive them, 50 miles away somewhere.
You know, we hired this company,
They
and
fly all,
they
they fly all across the country, 50
Right.
miles,
They
they
do have
can
wings.
do nothing to them.
But they know to come back
They
to
really
that
do.
spot.
You know, so there is an option for humane euthanasia, and it is absolutely humane. But I personally don't feel.
But the geese, I think, isn't that kind of, like bailing a boat out with, with a hole in it?
Well, not necessarily. So there, right now we spray the property with geese deterrent, and we
Yeah.
have lights as geese deterrent. So right now, the geese that have always been there are toughing it out with these deterrents. I don't know if we got rid of these geese, if those deterrents would be enough to prevent a new gaggle to come in.
Go back to the euthanasia. That's not an option.
I personally have an issue. I mean, there's an absolute time for humane euthanasia. I have an issue of humanely euthanizing pets because we're tired of poop. And don't get me wrong, I hate it. I probably walk there more than anyone here, but poop is a natural process, and I think we would get a lot of negative resident feedback if we decided to go that route.
It's a good idea.
I don't disagree with you on that. But I honestly, I just think you're just rowing against the tide if we're trying to euthanize them because the next flock is going to.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, think how
They're attracted to
how
the water.
heartbreaking it would be, and how bad we would feel, and how bad the town would look if we euthanized X amount, 20 geese, and a year later we had 20 new geese.
Yeah.
So I just don't think it's the route we should go.
And there's no other options you know of.
I don't know of anyone who relocates to that distance.
I
Because
have
I
an
think you'd have
option.
to.
Trumpeter swans. On my property, they keep the geese away, and they yell at not the mute swans that are not indigenous to our area, but trumpeter swans. They're screaming at anyone who lives in my neighborhood hears them screaming at the geese about to land.
Yeah, I don't think that sounds like a great option, a screaming swan.
But they're indigenous to this area, and they were going extinct at one time.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's kind of doing
It's not like bringing
I mean, the swans used to attack
swans
the
do
geese in
keep
the
the
past.
geese away, and
Yeah,
I
would just
have
fight around the
I have
pond.
They
in my
just-
yard. That's what happens. I don't really have, like I said, the geese that laid eggs on my property. They're not on my property anymore. They're gone. I think they went down the river and went to the Liberty Park. So it is something to consider, and I have a breeding pair, and I would be willing to donate a swan. Something to consider.
Yeah, I don't know anything about them. All I know is the swans that we had. Swans produce an enormous amount of fecal material that
Yeah.
really devastate a small pond.
They do. It's fighting one battle against another, but
Right.
it's two as compared to maybe 20 or more. That's just something to think about.
Yeah.
And I know how to get swans.
Can we borrow one of yours?
Well, if my swans have signets, I will certainly donate one.
Or borrow?
Or borrow, and I would
Yeah,
trade.
we-
You could trade the other one and do.
We've avoided putting swans back in the park because of the tremendous.
I
amount of
understand
beavers.
that, but I'm just saying they do chase the geese. But
When we
I
had
understand there's difficulties.
When we
with
had the geese police
introducing
with
more
the dog and the canoe,
waterfowl.
Yeah.
did that work, or was that just too expensive or too little of a?
What was this, the dog?
The geese police?
Yeah, they came in, they charged us an outrageous number, the
Mm.
geese were gone, and then they were back that evening.
Yeah.
It did never
It's
work.
really short term.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about dogs in general chasing the geese away? I mean, my dog
Well-
chases geese.
Oh yeah, I mean, if we could have loose dogs there, that'd be great.
Well, or even
You
on
want-
leash. I
just-
mean, if
Just
we,
waive the
I'm
leash
sorry I
law
asked,
in
Mrs.
Liberty
Jamie.
Park.
Yeah. No, I'll
Alright.
happily take my dog there every day and let him loose if no one cares.
I do have another update with the park. The Friends of the Library installed a free little library at the
They
top
didn't
lot.
install it yet, did they?
Yes, it was installed I think yesterday.
Oh shoot,
It was
we,
It was put in a spot that does not affect them doing the
okay, cause
playground.
we had requested they hold off because until, when we put the equipment in,
Oh.
that, big rigs will
But
have to.
it's okay. It's
Yeah, where the picture was that I saw, it's not in a spot, Brad said it's not in a spot that will affect them from doing the
Okay,
work
but
they
still
have
in a
to
good
do.
spot, cause we had
It's
picked
still
out
in a good spot.
Okay,
I saw it from a distance and it looks really nice and Meg said she picked up a lot of children's books and they're in the
it's
little
such a great
library
idea, I
already,
think
so
it's
thank
such
you
a
to
nice
Friends
addition,
again, yeah.
okay, good.
Alright,
And it sounds like the new, playground equipment will be there in maybe July.
awesome.
Hopefully July.
Yeah.
That's great,
Great.
that's
Yeah.
great.
They're looking for delivery the end of June, beginning of July, and installation sometime in July.
Did we use the entire grant?
We got, from the county, we got the $160,000 grant for that.
Right, but I'm saying, did we use the entire grant on
Yeah, you
whatever
have.
we?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
Okay, Don Lumber, fire, first aid, and police, all in one.
Sure, so, on the fire side, they were busy in April, they responded to 12 fires, 2 drills, 336 man-hours of work. Also of note, we've started discussions with their subcommittee for the engine replacement. Participating is, myself, Councilman Sweeney, and, the mayor, also participated in the discussion. We're off to a much better start than we had with the rescue truck, and, we're pleased with, the steps that we've outlined. Just to set a timing expectation due to, supply chain items, we're looking at about 4 years from the time we place the order to get the truck.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Holy
it's a long process.
I think it was all 4 years all in, including design and spec.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we've started that process, and, Ron Hill and, Brad Fagan are the representatives from the fire department. Very, pleasant to work with, Ron. My compliments to you and your team. With respect to the police, we've, interviewed the first police committee's interviewed the first candidate, that was, proposed, that got to that stage. We're gonna be hopefully looking at, a few other candidates over the next few weeks, and then we'll circle back with you, at that time. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Don. Eric, Rhodes.
Nothing to update the council on today, Mayor. I am working with Brad, just get an updated master list of the roads, something we committed to earlier in the year, so we're just working on getting that updated. And then I'll have a plan towards the end of the summer on the upcoming roads to be paved in the fall.
Okay, very good. I have nothing for zoning and construction, John Bruder, our legal.
Just briefly, unfortunately, I didn't have the 18 or so pages of the Matheny agreement memorized, so when the resident, Ruth Williams spoke, she, to me, I inferred that she was suggesting that the borough had not, or the council had not, done something that it should have done, which would be to have a written modification of the agreement. And I just want you to know, I was looking through it while she was speaking, and I was looking through it on the sides of my phone since I didn't have my laptop. And I would disagree with that suggestion, if that's what she was implying. With respect to the group homes, you should know, because I was part of the drafting of that settlement agreement. With respect to the group homes, there was no mandate that there be group homes. They were permitted in accordance with the agreement. Because Matheny had elected to not do that, there was no need to make a modification, a written modification to the agreement. So Ruth is correct that any modifications would have to be in writing, but I would resist the suggestion that there needed to be a modification to say there were no group homes that were going to be built, because it was not a mandate, but it was a permissive use. With respect to the beds, you will all recall that last year you instructed me, quite a while ago, maybe a year ago, because the council had been monitoring the rest of the relevant terms of the settlement agreement, the council was aware that they were coming up on reducing the beds. The 5-year mandate to go from 101 down to 71. And with that, you instructed me last year to write them a reminder and ask them, where are you in the process? And I think that's what began this dialogue that culminated in this evening's presentation, and there's still some things to go. And I would agree that if there's going to be a modification, that's something that the council should do by way of a resolution, and then a written, put it in writing. But that's strictly with respect to the bed count, as opposed to the both issues that were suggested.
All right, John, would you put that on your list to prepare that resolution as a modification to our settlement agreement?
Sure. And if, Nancy, now that they have the traffic
Please.
counters working, he was sort of approximate as to if they were or not, but just make sure Sarah Jane monitors now the correct numbers.
Give me a second, I'm sorry. Okay, Nancy, administrator's report.
Nothing tonight.
Okay, I have 3 short items for a mayor's report. I was invited to a luncheon at the Somerset County Business Partnership last week to talk about the virtues of Peapack and Gladstone. And I was very well received. I was there along with Mayor Larry Jacobs from Bedminster and Mary Jane Canoes from Bernardsville. And we all spoke about our towns, and it was productive, I would say. Exposing what Peapack can offer, not so much for business, but for a place for people to live in a very nice environment. Next Monday, there is a Memorial Day service, which I will be officiating at, 11 o'clock a.m. And the keynote speaker is Mayor Emeritus Greg Skinner. And afterwards, the fire department members are inviting everyone to the fire department for a barbecue lunch. So that's went up on the website, and hopefully people will come out for that. We're gonna try it at 11 o'clock, we'll see how we do this year with that. And then lastly, Council President Sweeney, Councilman Dunlem, and myself are all at the Fire and First Aid Awards dinner last Friday, and it was a very, very nice event, and I'm honored to be invited and be part of that. So that's all I have. Moving on, Mayor's Executive Summary. John, you're gonna get the ordinances out for the promotion, the sample ordinances from the 2 towns. Nancy, you have a resolution for Highlands for the next meeting, right? You also, the mayor's punch list item that I took off the agenda tonight will go on the next agenda, please. And Nancy, you have to send a V&K email to John Bruder, right? And you're gonna write them a letter on your letterhead.
Yep.
And then, John, you're gonna prepare the Matheny settlement resolution for vote at our next meeting. Okay?
Is our next meeting on Zoom? Does this start our?
I think it's July.
Yeah, July.
No, June 20, the last meeting in June,
Okay.
the June 27th meeting,
We
it
have 2
starts the
meetings.
Zoom.
I'm gonna end up showing up, I know it.
Yeah, so we have the 13th.
I will make sure that I send out the day before the login.
And
for it.
text me and.
Right.
Let me ask, public comments, 3 minutes per person for agenda items only. Does anybody in the audience have any comments they'd like to address the council on with respect to agenda items? Another Mayor Emeritus, Bill Muller.
Hi, I'm Bill Muller from Pottersville Road. Concerning the resolution that you voted on tonight to deal with John Smith's property, my question to you is, when I was involved with the council and in earlier days, Councilman Suriano always asserted that the property that John Smith owns between, what would it be, Branch Road and the Raritan River, was not developable. Is that the property that you dealt with tonight?
So, it's John Smith's, it's 40 acres, it's 4 buildable lots. So there was a survey done, and it is 4 buildable lots.
You've had,
We,
I guess
multiple people brought up that concern, and we evaluated it, looked at surveys, looked at multiple.
you had a wetland study done and so forth?
There was a wetland study done. There
All
was, yeah, there's a lot of information on it, and there were 4 buildable lots. It's 40 acres, so it's, where on the lots it could be builded would very likely be limited based on the wetlands, but there were 4 buildable lots.
And the property that you dealt with tonight is all between Branch Road and the river?
Yeah, so it's not including John Smith's home property on the other side, yeah.
Of the road.
So it's everything between, you know, if you're driving on Branch, to the right of Branch and to the left of the river.
All right.
Philip,
And just to let you, just to let you know, that this is being supported, this is financially, 10% of this cost is gonna come from the borough, so it's a beautiful area of land, so I'm personally am pretty excited about the fact that this 40 acres on a viewshed road is gonna be preserved, with very minimal financial output from the open space fund from PG. Just so you're aware.
I agree, it's a very attractive site. I think there's no doubt about that. But on the other hand, my concern is spending public money on land that could not potentially be developed. But you've suggested that that question has been answered.
Yeah, it has been addressed.
whatever we had been told years ago, because I was told the same thing, is obviously not correct. You
Yeah.
can build there.
Jamie,
Okay.
does that include, there's a hillside property, which I think is probably included in the 40, which would not be wet because it is on a hillside? So
Well,
maybe
some of that-
contributes to the 4 lots.
Yeah, possibly, because that kind of, I don't know.
It's not
when
really
it kind of
heavy.
starts to slope
Yeah.
up the hill,
Mhm.
he does have some of that hill property, but there is some lower that I believe was, when I saw the map, that's included in some of the buildable property.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Anyone else? Public comments agenda. Seeing none from our audience. Anybody online, Nancy?
I'm seeing
Raising their
nobody.
hand.
There's less people online than before.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Council members, if you have any further business?
No.
Okay,
No.
a motion and a second to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone who's in the audience who sat it out with us and for being here.
Feel better, Mayor.
I gotta thank you.
Glad I didn't sit next to you.
Yeah,
I know.
Thanks a lot.